Part 1. Quiet Life by the Sea. Shattered by a knock. Have you ever wondered if the silence in your home is louder than the waves outside, echoing a loneliness that creeps in like the tide, pulling at your heart until one unexpected sound changes everything? At 61, she gave her son everything and lost it all. The twist is unbelievable, and this story isn't just a tale of heartbreak. It's a real-life journey of rediscovering inner strength and the hidden paths to healing, drawn from everyday struggles like those you might face, making it a mirror for your own quiet battles. Imagine me, Elena, 61 years old, in my weathered cottage along Maine's rugged coast, where the Atlantic's salty waves crash against sharp rocks, carrying a chill that seeps into the bones. The faded blue shutters creak with every gust, and the air always smells of sea and pine from the nearby woods. This place has been my world since childhood, handed down from parents who braved these waters as fishermen, their hands calloused from nets and storms. I was born in the slanted roof bedroom upstairs, dreaming under stars peeking through cracks. Married Tom here, amid wild roses from our garden, and raised our daughter Lily in this kitchen, where her crayon marks still scar the old wooden table like faded tattoos of joy. But now, 9 years after cancer stole Tom's warm laugh, the rooms stretch empty and cold, like forgotten promises. I wipe dust from his nautical books that smell faintly of pipe smoke, tend his stubborn hydrangeas blooming defiantly blue against gray skies, and avoid glancing at his armchair by the window where he'd sip black coffee watching tempests brew, trying not to let tears blur the view. Lily flew to Seattle for college at 19, eyes bright with dreams of environmental science, vowing weekly calls, but life tugged her away. A tech job, marriage to gentle Alex, 2 grandsons I've met only in pixelated smiles and delayed cards. Her early photos of misty evergreens felt like home, but calls dwindled to holidays. Texts sparse, months silent. I tell myself it's the distance or demands, yet a whisper asks if I've become just a shadow in her bustling world. Like so many older Americans where recent studies show about 1 in 3 feel lonely often, a quiet epidemic that mirrors my own days. I almost tossed her old drawings last week, tucked in a twine-tied shoebox under my bed, but a flicker of hope stopped me. Have you ever clung to such small things just to feel connected? Each morning, after brewing tea in Tom's chipped pot, I scroll saved messages on my flip phone, pretending they're new, and whisper nightly prayers for her, even in the void. That routine taught me my first quiet lessons in resilience, turning solitude into a subtle teacher before I even realized the storm ahead. If you walk this path with me to the end, you'll gain not just empathy for the unseen pains around you, but practical whispers of wisdom on rebuilding trust, finding unexpected allies, and turning loss into a foundation stronger than before. Tools that could light your own way through life's fog. But that sharp knock on a foggy October afternoon, wind howling like a omen and gulls screaming overhead, it shattered the fragile rhythm I'd built. Who was there after so long, pulling me toward a whirlwind that would test every ounce of my quiet strength. Part 2. Memories of a loving family fade into silence. What if the happiest memories of your life started to feel like ghosts, haunting you with their silence, making you wonder if love ever truly fades or just hides in the shadows waiting to be called back? But one overlooked call could reveal a crack you never saw coming? Let's dive deeper into those fading echoes, because in my story, they weren't just memories. They were the foundation that kept me standing, and understanding them might help you hold on to your own before it's too late. Stick around to see how I turn that hush into hope. First, picture the warmth of our family dinners back when Lily was little. The kitchen filled with the smell of Tom's fresh clam chowder bubbling on the stove, steam rising like playful spirits. We'd gather around that scarred table under the yellow lamp that swung gently from the ceiling, Lily giggling as she drew pictures of us as superheroes fighting sea monsters. Her small hands sticky with butter from the cornbread, Tom would ruffle her hair and say, "Kids, this is what life is. Simple moments that stick forever." And I'd smile, feeling so full, like the ocean itself couldn't wash away our bond. But looking back, I see now how those nights taught me the real value of presence, the quiet power of empathy that builds a strength outlasting storms. It's something I wish I'd shared more with my neighbor Sarah, who reconnected with her kids after a year of silence and told me it saved her spirit. Don't let those sparks dim without fanning them first. Have you held on to a family ritual like that lately, or let one slip away? But as years slipped by, those lively scenes gave way to quieter pains, like that last long conversation 2 years ago.
Her voice crackling over the line from Seattle, telling me about her promotion at the tech firm, the excitement in her words mixed with exhaustion. She described the pressure of deadlines and Alex's late nights, admitting how the boys kept her running ragged. I listened, heart aching, because I could hear the distance growing, not just miles, but emotional walls built from adult stresses we all face. And in that moment, I realized personally that life's busyness isn't an excuse, but a trap we fall into, one that steals connections if we don't fight back. It's why I started journaling those talks, to remind myself empathy bridges gaps better than blame, a lesson that turned my waiting into active hope rather than passive hurt. Like Sarah said after her own turnaround, small steps like a weekly check-in can mend what time phrase. What small step could you take today to reconnect before the silence wins, before one call changes everything you thought you knew?
Then came the daily grind of solitude that wrapped around me like fog off the coast. Mornings where I'd pull out old letters from the drawer, yellowed envelopes with Lily's childish handwriting, promising forever visits. My fingers tracing the ink as tears blurred the words, feeling the paper's crisp edges like fragile lifelines. I'd sit by the window watching rain patter on the panes, thinking how one unanswered text could snowball into months of nothing. And honestly, in my quieter reflections, I learned that this fade isn't failure, but a call to rebuild from within, drawing on inner resilience like the sturdy pines bending but not breaking in gales. It's connected me to others in similar spots, sharing stories at the local library group where folks nod and say, "Me too," proving you're never truly alone if you seek those threads. A gentle nudge to nurture your spirit amid the quiet, just as it did for me before the real test began. Yet even in that hush, something stirred, a faint pull toward change I couldn't ignore, leading straight to the day that knock finally came, shattering the calm and igniting questions I'd buried deep. What if reunion isn't always what it seems? Part 3. The Unexpected Return. Sparks, Hope, and Doubt. What if a single knock at your door could reignite a flame you thought was long extinguished, only to make you question if it's real light or just a trick of the shadows, hiding something darker beneath the glow? Now, let's step into that moment with me, because this unexpected return didn't just bring back my daughter. It sparked a mix of hope and doubt that taught me lessons in trusting my gut, ones that could save you from similar twists in your own life. First, imagine my hand trembling as I turned the doorknob on that foggy October afternoon, the wood cool under my fingers, creaking open to reveal Lily standing there with a worn duffel bag at her feet, her face thinner than in the photos, eyes shadowed like she'd carried the weight of Seattle's rains all the way here. She looked up and whispered, "Mom, it's me." And in that instant, my heart leaped like a wave crashing over rocks, pulling me into a hug that smelled of airport coffee and faint lavender from her old shampoo. We stood there on the threshold, the wind whipping around us as if urging us inside, and as I pulled back to see her smile, crooked just like Tom's, I felt a rush of pure joy, the kind that erases years in seconds. But honestly, from my own quiet reflections, I've learned that such reunions aren't accidents. They're chances to rebuild. Like when my friend at the library group surprised her estranged sister with a visit and found healing in shared tears. It's why I believe grabbing those moments with open arms builds resilience you didn't know you had. Have you ever felt that spark of reunion light up your world? Or hesitated just a second too long? Yet as we settled into the kitchen with steaming mugs of tea, the steam curling like question marks in the air, Lily's stories poured out about her life out west, the tech job that drained her spirit, Alex's steady support through the chaos, and the boy's endless energy that left her breathless. She laughed, recounting how little Tommy drew a picture of me as a superhero grandma, waving it at the camera during our last video call. But beneath her words, I sensed a weariness, a hint of something unsaid in her averted eyes when she glanced at the empty armchair. And personally, that stirred a quiet doubt in me, reminding me how life's gloss can hide cracks. Much like how Sarah from the group ignored red flags in her own family reunion and regretted it later. It's a nudge to listen to that inner voice, turning potential pitfalls into paths of wisdom. What whispers have you ignored in your closest ties, especially when they seem too good to be true, before a hidden motive slips through? Then, as the afternoon light faded through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor like unspoken secrets, Lily leaned in closer, her hand on mine, warm but urgent, and shared how the distance had eaten at her, the guilt of sparse calls weighing heavier than she admitted. She spoke of missing the sea's rhythm and our old talks, her voice cracking just enough to pull at my heartstrings.
Yet in those pauses, a flicker of hesitation in her gaze made me wonder if this visit was purely from love or sparked by need.
And from my own heart, I know now that blending hope with healthy doubt isn't cynicism, it's self-protection, like planting hydrangeas that bloom through fraud, a balance that connected me deeper to others sharing similar stories at the library, where we all nod and agree, trust, but verify. A gentle reminder to nurture your intuition amid the glow, just as I did before her words shifted everything. But that growing doubt, subtle as the tide turning, hinted at changes ahead I couldn't yet see, pulling me toward an offer that promised new beginnings. What if saying yes meant risking the very ground I stood on?
Part 4. A tempting offer to start anew across the ocean. What if an offer that sounds like a dream come true actually hides the risk of losing everything you've ever known, pulling you across an ocean only to leave you adrift in ways you never imagined? Let's unpack that tempting proposal step by step, because in my experience, it wasn't just about moving. It was a test of heart and home that revealed truths about attachment and courage, lessons that might help you weigh your own big decisions before leaping. First, as the evening shadows stretched longer in the kitchen, Lily's eyes lit up like the first stars over the sea, and she leaned forward, her voice soft but steady, saying, "Mom, come live with us in Seattle. We've got space in our cozy house near the Sound, a room just for you with a view of the evergreens, and the boys can't wait to meet their grandma in person. Not just on screens. She'd paint pictures of family barbecues in the backyard, rain pattering on the roof like gentle applause, and lazy Sundays with Alex making pancakes while Tommy and his brother chase each other around. It sounded so vivid, like stepping into one of her old drawings brought to life, but from my own quiet corner of doubt, I felt a pull between excitement and fear, much like when Sarah from the library group moved in with her daughter after years apart and found joy in the chaos, yet warned me about the adjustments. It's why I believe such offers are doors to growth if you peek through wisely. Have you ever faced a choice that promised warmth but stirred a chill in your bones? Yet as her words settled like mist over the coast, I couldn't shake the weight of this cottage. Every creak in the floorboards a memory of Tom's footsteps. The garden's hydrangeas, his last gift blooming stubbornly each spring, and the walls that held our laughter like secrets. Lily pushed gently, saying, "The house is too isolated now, too full of echoes. We'd sell it and use the money for a fresh start. No more lonely winters fighting the wind alone." Her hand squeezed mine, eyes pleading like when she was little asking for one more story before bed. But personally, that stirred a deeper tug in me, reminding me how roots run deep and uprooting them demands care. Just as my neighbor John regretted selling his family farm too hastily for city lights and missed the soil under his nails, it's a whisper to balance heart with head, turning temptation into thoughtful steps. What hidden costs have you overlooked in your own tempting paths, especially when they gleam a bit too brightly before the real price reveals itself? Then, through the next few hours as tea cooled and stars dotted the sky outside, Lily shared more details, sketching out the life waiting, the boys' school nearby where I could volunteer. walks along Puget Sound echoing our Maine shores, but with new horizons, and even a small garden plot for my flowers. Her enthusiasm built like a rising tide, washing over my hesitations. Yet, in those quiet pauses when she checked her phone, a flicker of urgency in her gaze made me wonder about the full story behind her sudden visit. And from my own reflections by the window later that night, I realized offers like this aren't just gifts. They're mirrors showing what we truly value, blending hope with the courage to question. Much like how Sarah navigated her move by listing pros and cons over coffee with friends, finding clarity in shared wisdom, a nudge to trust your inner compass amid the allure, just as it guided me toward a choice that felt right in the moment. But that decision, born from a mix of love and lingering doubt, set waves in motion I couldn't yet fathom, leading to packing up a lifetime. What if holding on meant missing out, or letting go opened doors to unforeseen storms? Part 5. Packing up a lifetime and facing hard choices. What if packing up your entire life felt like folding away pieces of your soul? Each box a question mark about whether you're gaining freedom or just inviting regret to follow you across the miles. Now, let's walk through those hard days of decisions with me, because letting go wasn't simple. It was a crossroads of loss and possibility that taught me about boundaries and foresight, insights that could guide you through your own tough choices without the sting of hindsight. First, the morning after Lily's offer hung in the air like sea mist, I stood in the living room, sunlight slanting through dusty windows onto stacks of photo albums yellowed with time. My hands hesitated over Tom's old fishing hat, its brim frayed from years of salt and sun. As I wrapped it in tissue paper, memories flooded back of him teaching Lily to cast a line off the rocks, her laughter mixing with the waves. But with a deep breath, I tucked it into a box labeled keepsakes, deciding to bring only what fit in one suitcase, the rest to neighbors or the local church thrift. Lily helped sort, her fingers quick on clothes I donated. Yet in my heart, I knew this act of releasing built a quiet strength, like trimming back overgrown roses to let new buds form. Personally, it's what connected me to Sarah, who downsized last year and said it freed her spirit, though she missed the familiar sense at first. A reminder that selective holding on honors the past without chaining you to it. Have you ever boxed up a memory and felt lighter or heavier still? Yet as days blurred into a rhythm of sorting, the emotional toll crept in like high tide. One afternoon, I paused at Javier's. No, Tom's armchair, running my palm over the worn fabric that still held his shape, tears blurring the stitches as Lily suggested selling the house quickly to avoid winter repairs. We drove to the real estate office in town. Papers spread like a map of finality. The agent explained Maine's process simply. A visual inspection for disclosures on the roof's leaks or wiring quirks. Then a purchase agreement outlining contingencies for appraisal and title search to clear any old liens. I signed the deed transfer form, feeling the pen's weight like an anchor lifting. But honestly, that vulnerability hit hard, echoing how 1 in 3 older Americans battles loneliness that pushes rash moves, according to recent polls. Yet from my own nights staring at the ceiling, I learned setting emotional limits during such chaos protects your core. Much like John, who consulted a lawyer before selling and caught a title issue early, saving heartache. It's a nudge to pause and reflect amid the flurry. What boundaries have you set in your biggest transitions before emotions cloud the view? Then, As boxes piled by the door and the sale closed with funds wired to a joint account for the move, doubts whispered louder in the empty rooms. The echo of my footsteps too sharp. Lily's excitement about Seattle's markets contrasting my ache for the garden soil under my nails. We donated furniture to the church where folks thanked us warmly. But in quiet moments, folding Javier's scarf into my bag, I weighed the pros of family closeness against losing my roots. And personally, this facing of hard choices showed me foresight's power, blending practicality with heart, like Sarah's list of what to keep versus release that eased her path, connecting me to others who've navigated similar forks, proving small preparations turn upheaval into growth. A gentle call to map your steps carefully when life pulls you onward. But those choices, sealed with signatures and sealed boxes, propelled us toward the airport, a threshold where trust would face its sternest test. What if the journey's end wasn't the homecoming promised, but a solitude sharper than before? Part 6. Betrayal at the airport leaves her stranded. What if the busiest place on earth suddenly became the loneliest, where a simple wait for a loved one turns into a shattering realization that trust can vanish like a plane into the clouds, leaving you grounded in disbelief? Let's step into that chaotic airport moment with me, because this betrayal wasn't just abandonment. It was a raw awakening to vulnerability and vigilance that reshaped my world. Truths that might arm you against similar blindsides in your own bonds. First, as we navigated the bustling terminal at Portland Jetport, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like distant thunder, Lily wheeled my small suitcase through crowds of hurried travelers, their voices a murmur blending with announcements echoing off tiled floors. She turned with a smile, saying, "Mom, the gate's a bit far. Sit here and I'll grab a wheelchair from the desk. It'll be quick, 5 minutes tops." Her hug quick and warm before she vanished into the throng. I settled on a hard plastic chair, clutching my bag with Tom's scarf inside like a talisman, heart fluttering with excitement for the new life ahead, watching families reunite with joyful shouts and imagining our own in Seattle. But personally, in that hopeful pause, I felt the thrill of anticipation, like boarding a boat into uncharted waters, reminding me how Sarah once waited for her ride after a family visit and used the time to jot grateful notes, turning idle moments into mindful anchors. It's why I believe leaning into optimism builds inner buoyancy. Have you ever sat and wait, buzzing with dreams, only to sense a subtle shift in the air? Yet, as minutes ticked by on the big digital clock, 10, then 20, slipping away like sand through fingers, I scanned the faces streaming past, each one a stranger's story unfolding. My calls to Lily's phone going straight to voicemail, a cold knot forming in my stomach amid the airport's din of rolling luggage and coffee vendors calling out. The seat growing uncomfortable as doubt crept in like fog rolling off the Maine coast. And honestly, that growing unease taught me the sting of ignored instincts. Much like how John felt a twinge when his buyer delayed paperwork, but pushed ahead anyway, losing out later, a personal whisper to heed those quiet alarms before they scream. What gut feelings have you brushed aside in moments of trust, especially when the clock keeps ticking without mercy before the truth crashes down? Then, after 40 minutes that stretched like hours, an airport officer in crisp uniform noticed my worried glance, approaching with a kind nod and asking if I needed help, his badge glinting under the lights as I explained about Lily and the wheelchair, showing him our tickets and her photo from my wallet. He radioed quietly, his face shifting from concern to something softer, sitting beside me to say gently, "Ma'am, she's boarded the flight alone," the words hitting like a wave smashing against cliffs, leaving me breathless in the swirling crowd. Yet in that numb haze, staring at the floor tiles scuffed by countless feet, I realized betrayal isn't the end. It's a forge for sharper awareness, blending shock with the spark of survival. Much like how a woman in our library group discovered her sibling's deceit during a move and channeled it into stronger boundaries, connecting us all in shared resilience, a gentle nudge to rise from the rubble with eyes wide open, just as I began to in that echoing hall. But that stranding, cold and final as a locked gate, opened an unexpected door to strangers' kindness. What if rock bottom was just the starting point for a climb you never planned? Part 7. Strangers step in with unexpected kindness. What if in your darkest hour, when betrayal leaves you utterly alone in a sea of strangers, a single act of kindness from someone unknown could rewrite your story, turning despair into a fragile bridge toward hope? But what if that bridge leads to an even deeper revelation? Let's lean into those first flickers of unexpected compassion with me, because this wasn't random luck. It was a lesson in humanity's hidden warmth that rebuilt my shattered trust, one gentle gesture at a time. Insights that might remind you to spot and offer the same in your own circles. First, as the officer's words echoed in my ears like a distant foghorn, the terminal spinning around me in a blur of rushing feet and overhead screens flashing departures. He placed a steady hand on my shoulder, his eyes kind under the brim of his hat, saying, "Ma'am, you can't stay here like this. Let me help you find a safe spot. No one should face this alone." He guided me through the crowds to a quiet corner office, offering a cup of water from a cooler that gurgled softly. And as I sipped, the coolness easing my dry throat, he listened to my stammered tale without judgment, jotting notes with a pen that clicked rhythmically but personally. In that vulnerable haze, I felt a spark of gratitude ignite, like finding shelter in a storm, reminding me how Sarah once accepted help from a passerby after a fall and discovered strangers can be lifelines. It's why I believe opening up in weakness invites strength. Have you ever let a stranger's hand pull you from the edge or turned away out of pride? Yet, as the clock hands crept forward, marking an hour since Lily's disappearance, the officer, named Robert,
shared a bit about himself over a shared vending machine coffee, steam rising like tentative trust. He mentioned his wife Clara waiting at home with their dog, a rescue mutt that taught him patience and offered to drive me to a nearby shelter. But seeing my weary face, he paused and said, "Actually, our guest room's empty. Clara won't mind. She's got a heart bigger than the ocean." The car ride blurred past highway lights, twinkling like hesitant stars, and honestly, that leap of faith stirred a mix of fear and relief in me, echoing how John took in a stranded traveler during a blizzard and forged a lasting friendship, a personal nudge that kindness often blooms from shared humanity, not obligation. What acts of grace have you given or received that shifted your path, especially when least expected, before they unfold into something profound? Then, arriving at their modest house with its porch light glowing like a beacon against the night, Clara opened the door before we knocked, her apron dusted with flour from baking, eyes widening in surprise but softening instantly as Robert explained in hushed tones by the entryway. She wrapped me in a blanket warmed by the fire crackling in the hearth, guiding me to the couch with a mug of herbal tea that
steamed with chamomile calm. No questions asked at first, just presence that filled the room like a soft melody. And from my own thawing heart that evening, as tears finally fell unchecked, I realized strangers' kindness isn't pity. It's a mirror of our shared fragility, blending solace with the spark of renewal, much like the library group's collective hugs after sharing losses, where we all find we're not islands, but connected shores. A gentle call to pay it forward in small ways, just as it steadied me through the initial shock. But that warmth, wrapping around me like a promise, hid a looming shadow of news yet to come. What if the kindness that saved me also brought the weight of irreversible loss? Part 8. News of a tragic twist changes everything. What if the cruelest twist of fate arrived not from an enemy, but from the sky itself, delivering a blow that mixes grief with guilty relief, forcing you to confront if closure can ever truly heal a betrayed heart? Let's uncover that tragic news with me, because this wasn't mere accident. It was a storm that stripped away illusions and planted seeds of profound acceptance. Lessons in navigating loss that might echo in your own unexpected turns. First, a few days into my stay at Robert and Clara's, as I helped Clara knead dough in their sunlit kitchen, flour dusting the counter like fresh snow, Robert came home early, his uniform crisp but his face pale as a winter sky. He hung his hat slowly, avoiding my eyes as Clara followed him into the hall, their whispers carrying fragments like wind through pines. Flight delay. No survivors. My legs weakened against the table, heart pounding as if the waves back home were crashing inside me. But personally, in that suspended breath before confirmation, I felt a whirlwind of dread and denial, much like how Sarah overheard bad news about her sister and froze in disbelief, turning to prayer for anchor. It's why I believe facing the unknown head-on forges an inner calm. Have you ever braced for words that could shatter your world or let them hit without warning? Yet as Robert sat me down on the couch, the fires crackle, mocking the chill in his voice. He explained gently. The flight Lily boarded. It went down over the Pacific. Reports confirm no one made it. His hand steady on mine as tears blurred my vision, the room spinning like the terminal days ago. Clara brought tissues and held me close, her embrace warm against the cold truth sinking in. And honestly, that revelation stirred a tangled grief in me, mourning the daughter who'd betrayed yet remained my child, echoing how John lost his brother in a car crash after an argument and grappled with unresolved anger. A personal tug that forgiveness isn't erasure, but a bridge over pain. What mixed emotions have you wrestled with in loss, especially when betrayal lingers like a shadow before finding a way to let light in? Then, through the quiet nights that followed, wrapped in their guest quilt patterned with stars like distant hopes, I whispered to the ceiling about Lily's childhood laughs and recent pleas, the irony biting deep that her scheme ended in tragedy. Robert shared news clips on his phone, headlines flashing about engine failure and investigations. But in my own hushed reflections by the window, watching rain streak the panes like unshed tears, I realized this twist wasn't punishment, but a pivot, freeing me from what-ifs to embrace what's left, blending sorrow with strange peace, much like the library woman who learned of her ex's passing and channeled regret into helping others, connecting us in the cycle of human frailty, a gentle nudge to honor the lost by living fully, just as it dawned on me amid the supportive hush. But that profound shift, raw and reshaping as a coastal storm, opened paths to rebuilding. What if from ashes rose not just survival, but a life richer than before? Part 9. Building a new life from the ashes of loss. What if rising from the ruins of betrayal and loss felt less like a miracle and more like quiet, deliberate steps, where each small act rebuilds not just a life, but a soul, yet whispers a question? What hidden strengths wait in your own ashes to be uncovered? Let's trace those tentative rebuilds with me, because this phase wasn't overnight magic. It was a tapestry of small wins weaving resilience and purpose, lessons in renewal that might spark your own path from pain to possibility. First, in the warm glow of Robert and Clara's home, mornings began with the sizzle of bacon in their cast iron skillet, Clara handing me a spatula with a smile, saying, "Elena, show me your Maine magic with these eggs," her laughter light as I whisked in herbs from their windowsill pots, the kitchen filling with aromas that chased away the chill of solitude. We'd sit at the breakfast nook, sunlight filtering through lace curtains like gentle promises, sharing stories of our days while the dog curled at our feet, tail thumping softly. But personally, those shared routines stirred a budding sense of belonging in me, like roots finding new soil after a storm, reminding me how Sarah blossomed after her loss by joining a knitting circle and weaving friendships from yarn. It's why I believe inviting others into your daily rhythm heals invisible wounds. Have you ever let simple tasks with new faces mend your broken edges, or held back fearing the fit? Yet as weeks unfolded like pages in a fresh notebook, I ventured beyond their walls, Clara suggesting a walk to the community center, where posters fluttered for volunteer spots. her arm linked in mine as we stepped inside, the air humming with chatter and the scent of fresh paint from craft tables. I signed up for a simple cooking class, sharing my clam chowder recipe with a small group of locals, their eyes widening at the first taste. One young woman saying, "This reminds me of my grandma's kitchen, and honestly, that connection ignited a quiet confidence in me, turning shared skills into bridges over grief. Much like John, who taught woodworking after his upheaval and found purpose in others' creations. A personal tug that giving from your pain multiplies joy. What talents have you tucked away that could light someone else's way, especially when your own seems dim, before they reflect back brighter than expected? Then, evenings often found me at the desk, Clara set up in the guest room, a lamp casting a cozy circle on blank pages where I penned memories of Tom and Lily, words flowing like tides releasing pent-up waves, the scratch of pen on paper soothing as stories took shape. Robert peeking in once with a cup of tea, saying, "Keep going, Elena. Your voice matters." And from my own unfolding heart, I realized this rebuilding wasn't erasing the past, but honoring it through creation, blending sorrow into something shared, like the library woman who journaled her betrayal and turned it into group readings that healed us all. A gentle nudge to let your experiences flow outward, fostering growth in unexpected gardens, just as it did for me in those nurturing nights. But that emerging life, tender as new shoots after fire, held one final layer of wisdom waiting to bloom. What if true family isn't born, but built from the hearts that choose you? Part 10. Lessons in Trust, Forgiveness, and True Family. What if the deepest wounds teach us that trust isn't blind leaps, but careful bridges? Forgiveness isn't forgetting, but freeing yourself. And family blooms not from blood, but from chosen hearts. Yet one quiet realization could redefine everything you've held dear. Let's wrap this journey with those hard-won truths, because reflecting on my path from betrayal to belonging wasn't just closure. It was a blueprint for mending what life frays, insights that might light your way through your own tangled ties. First, in the soft hush of Robert and Clara's living room one crisp autumn evening, as leaves swirled outside like confetti from a forgotten party, we sat around the table with mugs of cider steaming gently. Clara's hand on mine as she asked, "Elena, how do you rebuild trust after it's shattered like glass?" Her eyes reflecting the fire's dance. I shared how I'd started small, testing waters with honest talks at the community center, like when a new friend confided her own family rift and we swapped stories under the quilt circle, laughter easing the edges. But personally, that process revealed trust as a garden you tend daily, not a gift once given. Much like Sarah, who mended her sibling bond by setting gentle boundaries after years of hurt, turning caution into connection. It's why I believe vulnerability with vigilance heals deeper than walls ever could. Have you ever rebuilt a bridge you thought burned, or let the ashes cool too long? Yet As winter's first snow dusted the windows like a blank page waiting for ink, forgiveness crept in during long walks with Clara along frosted paths, our boots crunching rhythmically as I confessed the anger still flickering toward Lily's choices, picturing her last hurried smile at the gate now layered with sorrow's patina. Clara nodded, sharing her own release of a childhood grudge through letters never sent, burned in a backyard fire pit under starry skies. And honestly, that act stirred a lightness in me, like shedding a heavy coat after rain, reminding me forgiveness isn't absolution for the wrong, but liberation for your soul, echoing how John forgave his late brother's silence by honoring shared memories in a toast at gatherings. A personal whisper that letting go paves room for peace. What grudges have you carried that weigh more than they deserve, especially when release feels like flying free before they anchor you still? Then, through spring's thaw, when crocuses pushed up like hopeful fingers from the earth, I gathered Robert, Clara, and a few center friends for a simple picnic on the green. Baskets brimming with my chowder and Clara's apple pie. Laughter bubbling as the dog chased frisbees in lazy arcs, and in that circle of easy warmth, I saw family not as fate's design, but hearts woven by choice, their hugs feeling like home's true echo, far from the cottage's empty rooms, but from my own grateful core. I know now that true kin emerge in the crises, blending loss with love's quiet power, much like the library group's evolving circle where strangers became sisters through shared storms, a gentle call to seek and nurture those bonds that choose you back, just as they chose me into fullness. And so, as the sun sets on this chapter of my life, richer in scars and stories, remember, not every break destroys us. Some crack us open to let the light pour in. If this tale stirred your heart, hit that like, drop a comment on a lesson that landed, share it with someone needing hope, and subscribe for more whispers from the waves of real lives reborn. What bridge will you build next?